Hey guys, before we get into what we want to do today, I'd like to quickly demonstrate the sending images function. So in the previous video, just before I demonstrated it, the recording cut out, which was unfortunate, but no matter, I can do it now. So I have my physical device here on the left. I'm going to long press our widget, our edit text, and as you can see, it's taken us immediately to the device where the images are. I'm going to look for one. Guess this one's fine. And it's taken me back to the app. So now what should happen is that it should go to the database, the link should go to the database, and then for the recipient, both the recipient and the sender, it should show that image in the chat activity, rather in the chat list. Okay, so on my physical device it's showing me the placeholder image, which means it's registered that there is an image, and now it's just showing this until it can fully load that image. So let's wait and see. And there it is. There's the image that I just sent, and it's showing perfectly. So now we shift our attention to the other one, which is the recipient, the person who I want to get this image, which is now this emulator. I'm not surprised that it's taking long. The internet is rather bad, but it should show. So let's see. Alright, it's taking longer than I anticipated, but no matter, we can leave that for now. I'm sure it will behave itself later on. At least we've seen that it can actually send the image. And in fact, for a final thing, let's go to the database. And here's the messages table, and here are the two users. So I don't know exactly which one is which, but either way we can see that in place of a message we have a link that goes to that image. So yes, that has worked perfectly. Oh, and also of course we have type being image instead of text. So yes, that's worked perfectly. A pity we can't show the image on the emulator, but that's fine. I'll probably be able to show it another time. Okay, on to today's work. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the main activity. Right now it has 3 tabs. Here it is, although you won't be able to see it, but I'll still just open main activity.xml. So we have, to begin with, the chats tab, the friends tab, and finally the groups tab. Now in the chats tab, what I want to have is, just as you have in most chat applications, for every person you've spoken to, it should show a list of those people in order of who spoke last, and at least the last message that they sent to you. So that's the first thing, that's one of the things we have to work on. And then the next one is the friends tab. Now this one is rather different from usual chat applications. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep it as simple as possible. We'll have in the profile a button which you can click, and once you click it, you add that particular person as a friend. And in that case, you don't have to go to users to look for someone who you want to chat with. Once you find them in users for the first time, you can add them as a friend, and their name will always appear in the friends list. So that one's quite simple, and therefore we will start with that. So over to the profile activity. Now in the XML, which is here, I've gone ahead and added another button, and all it says is add as friend. I gave it the ID of friend, and other than that, I changed the background color to red, and other than that, it's just the same as the one above. So actually what I did was I copy pasted this, changed the background color, the text, and then gave it the ID of friend. So you can go ahead and do that. And then in the profile activity, we can close others. So what I have right now is just a database reference called friendsdb, and I've initialized it down here as Firebase database get instance get reference .child friends. So this will be the new table, and then .child current user ID. So we'll be, in this case, we are going to save all these friends all the friends of the currently logged in user within a child with their own current user ID, just as we do for the messages. Okay, so let's initialize that button. So right here next to message, I'll type friends, friend. So it will be the friend button, and I'll initialize it again below this message. So Control D to duplicate, and then friend is equals to find view by ID r.id.friend. All right. Next thing, let's go a bit further down to our if statement. If user ID is equals to current user ID, so if a person is looking at their own profile, what we had done was we'd set the visibility of the message button to invisible. We'll do the exact same thing for friends so that you can't friend yourself. Friend.set visibility to invisible. Next thing is to add a value event listener on the friends database. friendsdb.add value event listener. And what we want with this is to see whether the two are already friends. So to do that, we need an if statement, and all we have to do is look at the data snapshot and see whether it has the child of UID. So if it has this child, that means they're already friends. So we're interested in whether it does not, so we'll add the not to the front of this statement. And now in here is where we can add our on click listener. Now, something I should mention, this is perhaps not the best way to write this code, because what I'd like to do later is to also put an else statement. I can even type it now, and it would mean we have to write another on click listener. So not best practice. It's doable, of course, but there are perhaps better ways to achieve this. Either way though, it will work, but if you find a more efficient way of doing it rather than my quick way, go ahead and implement that. So in the first on click listener, we will set them as friends, and to do that we simply have to type friendsdb.child uid.child once again, and this time we can just give any child, I guess time is fine, and we can set the value to the current time, which is server value dot timestamp. Okay, and in the other one we can have a toast message, toast.makeText context you, and then I'll concatenate the name, username string are already friends, or simply are friends. And we can give that for a short time and .show. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll also put it here. You and username string are friends. Yes, yeah, so that just so that when they become friends, they get to see something, so that we know that it worked. Okay, I'm going to run this and we'll see if it worked. Okay, so the app's running. I've gone ahead and navigated to Doe's profile, and what I'll do is I'll click the add as friend button, and it says you and Doe are friends. Now let me go to the database. There it is, and as you can see, the friends table has been created, and here's the current user ID, and within that the friend ID. And finally, we have just the little entry that we made, because it has to have something. The final child has to have some entry. So we put time, and there's the timestamp. So that's worked perfectly. So let's move immediately on to showing this in a list. Before we do, here's the emulator. It finally decided to behave itself. So there's the image now received from the now seen as a recipient. That is, as you can see, the icon shows the icon of the sender, which is incidentally the same as this icon. I copy pasted, and also notice that it's shifted to the left rather than to the right, because this is a sender, rather this is a recipient who's getting this image. So again, something to be glad about. This has worked. Okay, let's move on. So for the for the showing of the friends list, I already wrote the code. In fact, I've wrote for both the friends list and the chats. So what I'll do is I'll give links down below, but I want to explain for at least one. They are both very similar. So I'm sure if I explain one of them, the other one will just fall into place. So let me close this. And let's open friends, the friends fragment. So it's still empty. Now, before we go on, notice that I have created a friend class, and the friend class, it has just that one entry, which was time, because in our friends table, we only bothered to put time, and it has to match up because we're going to use Firebase Recycle Adapter. So we created a class called friend, and all it had was time. Empty constructor is there, the constructor with time is there, and then the getters and setters. And now we can go into the friends fragment, and within it, the very first thing I'll create is a context variable. So context, and I'll also create a view. No, we can do that within this view, and then I'll cut this and say is equals to that, and we can simply return view. Then I'll initialize my context. So context is equals to, and since this is a fragment, we cannot say this, we have to say get activity. Okay, next thing I need is a Firebase, or actually no, always looking to make things more efficient, string current UID, and here I will say current UID is equals to Firebase auth dot get instance dot get current user dot get UID. Next thing I'll need is a few database references. So the first one will be root, followed by friends DB, followed by user DB. Okay, then the next thing I'll need is a recycle adapter. Let's make all of these private. And actually, I think I should put this as a global variable. Seems somehow seems right. So view. Okay. So the next thing I need, as I said, is a recycle adapter. So private recycler view, not a recycle adapter. It's private recycler view, and this will simply be friends. Now I should show you that in the layout, in the XML for this fragment, I have added a recycle adapter. Oh no, this is for groups. That's because I was testing something and I had to copy in the groups one, so I'll just change that to friends. Now we can go there, fragment friends. So here I have created a recycler view, and that's the only thing that I need in this activity, in this fragment. And I've given it the ID of friends list. So in the design, there's nothing else completely. So fragment friends, so private recycler view friends, and I can initialize that here. Friends is equals to this view dot find view by ID r dot id dot friends list. Okay, and I'll put that below the current user ID. Okay, and now let's initialize our database references. So the first one, root, is equals to Firebase database dot get instance dot get reference, and then the rest can just feed from root. So friends DB is equals to root dot child friends dot child current user ID. and then I will duplicate this, change this to user DB, change this to users, and get rid of this entirely. We want to get to the main users table. Okay, so that's all we need in our onCreate view. Next thing is to create an onStart method, or rather to override the onStart method. And within this, just as we did in the users activity, we're going to create a Firebase recycler adapter. And it will take the class of friend and friend's view holder, which we haven't created yet. I'll name it adapter and is equals to new Firebase recycler adapter, and we'll let all that code generate. So now, before we go on, let's create this class, and we can do that underneath the onStart. So I'm going to just copy this in. There it is. So public static class, make sure you make it static. Friend view holder extends recycler view dot view holder. Then all you need is to create a view object, override the method, override the insert the constructor, and make that view that you made to be equals to item view, which will come in on its own. And then you will need the methods to set your widgets. So it's username, status, and the avatar, just as usual. And within it, you have just the same methods that we had, or similar methods that we had in our users class. So you can even copy those ones if they're the same. So I'll just import this and import that. So that's all we have: a constructor and 3 methods to set the widgets. Okay, let's go on with our recycle adapter. So now we have to give it its parameters, and the parameters, the first one is the class, friend.class. The next one is the layout, r.layout.singleUser. Following this, we have friends view holder, which is the class that extends the recycler view holder. And finally, we need our database reference, which is friendsDB. Okay. Oh, and I need to put .class here. Okay. And now for our populate view holder, once again, I'll just copy this in. There it is. So let me just import that and import this. Okay, so let's go through it. What is this error? Oh, I have to import that, and then finally this, I'm sure, wants to be final. Yes, so I'll just make that final. Okay, now that all the errors are gone, let's explain it. So the very first thing we do is we get the ID of the friend, and that string friend ID is equals to getRef position. So this will just get where we are right now on the list, and then we'll get the key, and the key, of course, will just give us that UID. Then what we can do once we have the string, the friend's ID, is we can now go into the user database using that ID that we just got to get the actual user. So database reference user DB is equals to root.child_users.child_friend_ID. And then the next thing is to add a value event listener to that users DB. And within that value event listener, we are just doing the exact same thing as the user class. We are setting the username, we are setting the status, we are setting the avatar, and then we are making it so that when we click any, we go to the profile of that person. Sorry, not the profile, the chat activity. We go to the chat activity so that we can chat with them. But also the profile would be fine. And of course, if you're going to do that, you need to pass in the user ID and the username. Okay. Let's test this and see if it worked. Remember, if this was a bit quick, I will give links in the description so that you can just get the code yourself. But please try and go through it, try and understand. It's very simple. It's very similar to the user's activity. And I just remembered something. Although I have created my Firebase Recycle adapter, I haven't actually used it. So that would have been really wasteful if I had run the app and it didn't work because I hadn't simply said chat friends dot set adapter. And I also remembered something else, also rather embarrassing. I did not create a linear layout manager. It's something else that I can simply copy in. There it is. So linear layout manager, we can import that. And I also copied in this keep synced method so that even if we are online, we'll still, even if we are offline, we'll still have the data. And I set has fixed size to true for our friend's recycler view. So I'm going to run this and we'll see if it works. Okay, so here's the app running. I'm in the friends tab and as you can see, it's empty. So what we'll do is we'll go to users, and I'll select Will, and I'm going to click add as friend. And now if I navigate back to the main activity, I have Will and his status proudly showing themselves as one of my friends, which is wonderful. So this has worked perfectly the first time, despite me having forgotten to copy in a few lines of code here and there. So now let's take a look at chats. To begin with, we can look at the layout. As you can see, just another recycler view with chats list as the ID this time. And then we have the model class, so it just has scene and timestamp, simple enough. And then the fragment itself. So within it, all I did is initialize the recycler view, so recycler view chats, and it's initialized here. I created my database references. I needed the chat DB, the message DB, and the user DB. And then I got a current user ID, just as I did in the last one, and I got my view. So those are my global variables, and they are initialized in here. I created my linear layout manager, set has fixed size to true, and set layout manager to linear layout manager. Simple as that. It's what we've already done. And then we go to the onStart method. So the main difference here is that I'll also make use of a query. Queries work just the same way Firebase database references work, except that you can run extra messages on them, such as order by child. Other ones include, let's see, dot startat dot order by key, order by priority, order by value, etc., etc. So queries just allow you to order your data, among other things. In my recycler adapter, I do pretty much a similar thing. You pass in your class, your layout, which is the same one, your chat view holder, and your chats query. The chat view holder is quite similar. It has the constructor and the methods that we have now for a chat. So the set message, the set name of the person, the set, and setting the avatar. And then of course we can set whether they're online or not. Okay? Next thing, inside the populate view holder, another query, this time to look into the message DB, into the recipient IDs, and to limit to last one. So let's explain what this does. Essentially, we're going to go into this database, into this table rather, messages, and then assuming this is the person who chatted with us last, let's say this was their UID, we're going to go into that. Or rather, sorry, let's say this was ours. This was our current user ID. We're going to go into the user ID of the person who chatted with us last, which we can say is this. And then we're going to just limit it to one message. This person only has one message, so this would be the one that gets taken. Okay? So once we've done that, we can take the query and add a child event listener, and within this we can now start getting that message. So string message is equals to data snapshot.child message, and then viewholder.set message msg. Okay, way below that we can also use the recipient ID to go into the user table, and within that we'll just set the username and set the avatar and whether or not the person is online. So that's all we'll do. Please, once again, feel free to copy this code with the link in the description, because I know even this explanation may have been a bit rushed. So, oh, and of course there's the on-click listener, so that we can go to the person's chat activity. And yeah, I'm gonna run this, but with some confidence because I've already done it before and we know it works. Okay, so the app is running, there it is, and you can immediately see that it has worked. So I have an entry into the chats list. The icon is showing, the avatar is showing, the username is showing, and this is the last message. So as you know, an image stores as a link, which is why we have a huge link in place of the last message. Now I have my physical device running next to me, so I'm just going to send a message. And as you can see, it's changed and it's fetched that last message which said hello, and it's put that instead. So if I click this, let's see if it will take me to the chat activity. And it did. There's the image that we were seeing, and there's the hello. So I suppose one last thing we could do is we could do some logic that if it's an image, if it's a link, that is, or rather no, if the type of the message is image, then instead of showing that whole link, we just say, for example, image, and we put a little icon of a picture, something like that, instead of showing the whole link. But other than that, it has worked perfectly. So not only do we have our chats list, let's go back. Not only do we have our chats list that will show us who the last person we talked to was, rather what the last message of the people we've talked to is, we also have our friends list, which will have the friends that we've added. And yeah, that's worked perfectly. So the thing that is remaining is groups. But what I've decided is I'm going to do a small mini series separate from this one for how to create groups in a messaging application. It's very simple, and I foresee it taking 5 or so, 5 maybe 6 videos, perhaps even less. It's quite simple. So then, let's summarize. We have managed to create a fully functional mobile application that allows users to create an account, log into that account, send messages, send images if they want. It also allows them to edit their profile so that they can set their username and set their status, and also set their avatar so that it's whatever image they like. It will allow them to create groups and add people to those groups, and it also allows them to create friends. Now let's quickly go over what we haven't done. It's a very long list, but I'll just mention the main ones. First of all, we need to make it so that ideally it should be, the friends thing should be a two-way thing. You should be able to say you don't want to be someone's friend. So that means creating friend requests, not just adding friends. Another thing is it should allow, we did create the entry in the database for whether a message is seen, but it doesn't actually change. So even if I see a message, that will still be false. So we should create some logic that will check whether a message has been seen. It's quite simple. If you go into if you go into the chat activity, that means you've seen the messages. So all the messages should be immediately set to true for the seen entry. And yeah, of course, the groups on which I just mentioned. But other than that, here is more or less a full app that if you followed to this point, you have created with your own 2 hands, and I applaud you for that. Also, thank you very much for watching all the way to this end. If you didn't watch all the way, if you just watched the few videos that you needed for whatever it is you might be working on, thank you either way for watching those. And I hope to see you in the next part. Goodbye for now.